Brown Fuller to move the motion.
Thank you, Sir John. I beg to move that this House consider transport in the South East.
And it's a pleasure to open this debate today. I thank the many members here who hope to raise transport concerns with the Roads Minister. I know from my experience that transport issues take up a significant proportion of our casework and inboxes. I would like to thank all of the constituents who have been in touch with me regarding transport since the election, and particularly in the last few days when I was preparing for this debate, because how we move around our communities affects everybody, and it is one of the most regular issues that comes up on doorsteps in and around Chichester. And when done correctly, transport systems make people's lives easier and support thriving local economies. And when it's done badly, it's a noose around the neck of an area that has so much to offer. And the South East has much to be proud of in terms of impressive pieces of transport infrastructure, vital not only to our communities but to the nation more widely, whether it's the beautiful Ouse Valley Viaduct, our strategically important airports, the Channel Tunnel, or even the admittedly long overdue but now incredibly satisfying M25A3 junction, which I had the pleasure of driving through at the weekend and enjoyed immensely. I'm sure I'll happily give way to my honourable friend.
Congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Chichester, for securing today's important debate on transport in the South East. And as you may know, I have long been championing the Western Rail link to Heathrow, which would enable speedy and sustainable surface access for the good people of the South East, and indeed 20% of the UK population, without the need to go in and then out of London and get people out of their cars. Does my honourable friend agree that given the government is prioritising investment in infrastructure, the government should commit finally to this project, because this is a perfect example of a project delivering for people, the environment and the economy?
Yes, Brown Fuller.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and he'll be pleased to hear that he's much closer to the government in charge than I am, and has a brilliant opportunity to make his concerns with the Minister today and make sure that it's heard very well, that you're absolutely right to raise going in of London and then out to get to these vital pieces of infrastructure feels like a nonsense. And I'm sure many honourable members across the House will wax lyrical about their own transport woes today, but it will come as no surprise that the focus of my contribution will be on the impact poor transport infrastructure has on my constituency of Chichester. And the Roads Minister knows that the A27 is one of the busiest trunk roads in the UK, and it's the main arterial route for those travelling down the coast all the way from Wiltshire in the west to East Sussex. Months ago, I invited the Transport Secretary during Transport Questions to come and sit in traffic with me. I have no idea why she declined, but my point was that it didn't matter when she came, at what time of day, what day of the week. I could guarantee we would be caught in congestion. Now, what the Transport Secretary did do is offer me a meeting with the Roads Minister, and I'm very grateful to the Roads Minister for sitting down with me so I could explain the issue in more detail. And if I was to stand here and pull up Apple Maps or Google Maps at this exact moment, there will almost certainly be a red ring around my city with traffic at a standstill. If it's bad, I'll happily give way to my honourable friend.
Can I commend the Honourable Lady for bringing this forward? I find myself in a very similar, frustrating circumstance as the Honourable Lady is indicating. For my case, it's the proposed Ballynahinch bypass, which would breathe new life into Ballynahinch. And as the Honourable Member in his intervention said before, it's been postponed and postponed since I was first elected to this House in 2010. Does the Honourable Lady agree, when it comes to road structures and infrastructure in particular, and what the Honourable Lady is requiring for her constituency, then these major projects will have major local effects? They will boost the economy. They will clear up the long waiting list when it comes to traffic. They will make jobs happen. And it must never be relegated to a dusty shelf, which for the last few years it quite clearly has.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and it's almost like he's read my speech in advance, because I'll be going on to a lot of the things that he has just raised in his intervention. Because if it's bad today in my constituency, it's hard to imagine how much worse it is on a sunny day, when tourists for the Witcherings queue for miles to reach our lovely sandy beach, or when Goodwood hosts an event that attracts visitors in their thousands. I will happily give way to my honourable friend.
For giving way. She's been very generous with her time, and she talks about coastal roads, and I would like to raise the current situation in South Devon. The A379, which is a glorious coastal road in my constituency, had already been damaged in storms in January, but last night huge chunks of it literally washed into the sea. It's absolutely devastating. And I was very shocked to be told this morning by officials at the Department for Transport that there is no national emergency fund for repairs to roads caused by, for example, storm damage. Would my honourable friend agree with me that as we see more intense and frequent storms caused by climate change, that the government needs to ensure it has funding ready to support communities like those around Torcross in South Devon that have been devastated by this damage?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and she has shown me the photos today of what has happened in her constituency, and I share her distress at the fact that a main road, an A road, has literally fallen into the sea, and our constituency share the fact that we're both low-lying coastal plains that are the forefront of climate change, and as we see more of these storm events, we are seeing the damage happen in our communities. And that brings me on to a particular tribute that I'd like to pay to my residents living on the Manhood Peninsula, who get completely trapped in the summer months because of congestion on the roads. They're unable to get out of the area. And today they're trapped because all of the roads in and out of the Manhood are completely flooded. A constituent of mine, Georgia, left her job working as a nurse because her commute was taking 2 hours, with 1 hour spent travelling just the handful of miles from Emsworth to Tangmere. Chris's son has school transport and has to leave an hour before school starts due to the traffic on the A259 onto the A27. Again, he's only travelling a small number of miles. Melanie is planning on packing up her successful mental health business because the gridlock is, perhaps ironically, negatively affecting her mental health. Sean owns a funeral company, and he told me of the time he had to get out of the hearse to physically clear the traffic to get to the local crematorium on time. And Daniel owns a home carers company, and he regularly reports that staff get stuck on the A27, which means that the people they are caring for in the community miss medicine times and hospital appointments, and the backlog means that people get seen later and later in the day. I am in no doubt that this congestion we are seeing on the A27 is strangling the city, and it's putting off investment from businesses. It's stopping people coming and shopping in the city or in the business parks, and it's impacting people's daily life. Now, the A27 Chichester Improvement Scheme has a long history dating back to the 2000 South Coast Multimodal Study. Following several iterations, the scheme was included in the 2013 White Paper, Investing in Britain's Future, and the 2014 Road Investment Strategy. The scheme went to consultation in 2016 when 93% of respondents to a highway survey said that congestion was a problem on the A27. But in 2017, the Secretary of State removed the funding for any improvements along the Chichester stretch, and there remains significant anger and frustration among residents that they were never given the opportunity to vote on a preferred model of road improvements, especially as the Chichester district has seen more than its fair share of house building over the last decade. If the government expect areas such as ours to continue to sustain such an increased level of development, residents need to see the investment in infrastructure too. But instead it seems that their local services, be it GPs, schools, roads, buses, are just expected to manage the additional capacity with no extra resource. I have met with... I'll happily give way to the honourable gentleman.
Thank you very much, the honourable member, for giving way and pay tribute to her for securing the debate and the great speech she's making. She just mentioned the role of buses. I think there tends to be an assumption for people outside the South East that we all have the bus networks that are very similar to those in London. But you don't have to go very far from London, in my constituency in Dartford, for instance, to find that the bus services become extremely limited. And yet bus services can be such a driver of a better quality of life for people around getting to education, getting to work, being able to access other opportunities. Would she agree with me that the extra money that the government has given to county councils, in my instance Kent County Council, an extra £42 million to spend in the coming year on improved bus services, must be spent to ensure that we provide better connectivity for all our residents irrespective of whether they're in Kent, Sussex, Hampshire or other parts of the South East.
That intervention tested my legendary patience to its very limits, but so just bear that in mind in the future. Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank you, Sir John, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his very important intervention, and he's right to mention that County Council should be using that money effectively to ensure that people across the constituencies that we represent can actually get to the places they need to get to, which is certainly not the case in my constituency, especially in my more rural villages and hamlets.
On that note,
Happily give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. It'll be a pithy intervention.
Far away.
Sir Hayes. One thing I've discovered is that the rural villages in my constituency, like Colden Common among others, people rely on the bus service to maintain their independence. And if the bus service goes, they can't get to hospital appointments, they can't stay in the house they may have lived in for years. So my friend agreed with me that there's more than just an economic impact to having good transport. It actually allows people to live a full and independent life without relying on care.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, and he allows me the opportunity to thank organisations that offer community transport, such as the Selsley Venture Bus in my constituency or Contact 88, that are helping make sure that people can get to the places they need to go when transport infrastructure is lacking. So I have met with National Highways on multiple occasions since being elected, and I know that the original proposals for the A27 still exist in a drawer somewhere, ready to be brought back out to the table to address a road that not only doesn't function, but also remains in the top 10 nationally for casualties. National Highways have agreed to fund a study into the Fishbourne roundabout, which desperately needs addressing. This is due to report in the spring, and I hope the government will be forthcoming with funding for the proposed improvements, as it is such a dangerous roundabout, and I am one of many that have nearly been involved in an accident on that roundabout, and I do fear that there will be a fatality before long. The A27 Chichester bypass remains part of a future road investment scheme, and the Roads Minister has met with me to hear my plea to fund its improvement. But it would be great if the Minister could provide any reassurance today that funding will be attached to the A27 for that future road investment scheme, something all of my constituents will be desperate to hear. And if she is unable to commit to the level of funding required, will she please meet with me and National Highways to explore alternative schemes to address how people move around in my area? The government is keen to get more people onto public transport, reducing the reliance on cars in particular, but the increase in fares from £2 to £3 has had a significant impact on constituents that are trying to do just this. Christina gets her children get the bus to school every day, so she encourages public transport, but the cost is £26 for a 7-day child pass when the young people don't always get a seat. It's totally unacceptable, and if Christina chooses to take her 3 children into the city for the day, the cheapest option is a day rider that costs her £17 for 2 bus journeys which last approximately 10 minutes each way. All of the above makes travelling by car by far the easiest and more sensible option, which is why we are calling for the reinstatement of the £2 bus fare cap and for fees to be halved for under 18s. And at the same time, bus routes are being amended to cover new housing developments, but without any additional services being added. So routes take longer than they did previously, and they're costing more, which is a perfect cocktail to disincentivise bus use. So I asked the Minister what steps the government is taking to encourage more people to use buses, and what steps they are taking to ensure that in places with major development, like my constituency of Chichester, adequate work is being undertaken to make sure that bus services for current residents aren't affected, and importantly, that public transport is a material consideration on new developments rather than an afterthought. Now, there are some great examples of active travel in my patch, particularly making the most of the disused railway lines along the Centurion Ray into the South Downs. But the issue is that councils such as West Sussex County Council, the issue that they face is that funding for these schemes is often linked to performance-related measures set by Active Travel England, and this creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, with councils that are already delivering good provision being rewarded and provided with further funds, whilst those that struggle are being left behind. So I'd love to understand from the Minister if the criteria linked to funding for active travel schemes will be reviewed by this government, so areas like mine aren't left behind with poor infrastructure because the County Council have historically struggled to deliver active travel schemes. There shouldn't be a postcode lottery in active travel provision, and projects to create cycle lanes and footpaths take far too long from the ideas phase to the actual delivery phase. And I'll just briefly touch on rail. Chichester is not endowed with services that are quick, punctual or affordable. Last year, 1 in 5 Southern Rail trains arrived in Chichester late, despite a season ticket to London costing nearly £8,000 annually. So although our party have long called for a freeze in rail fares, and we were glad to see the government do this last year, my residents are still paying well over the odds for the service that they receive, which is severely lacking. And the service into London is dreadfully slow compared with services from similar cities at a comparable distance. And this is partly due to issues in the infrastructure that have been ignored for years, such as the Croydon bottleneck, where the Arun Valley line joins the Brighton main line. Network Rail have said that this causes a ripple effect of delays across the system, prevents the expansion of the line in future, and creates delays across the entire network when there is a failure in service much further up the line. And it doesn't really ring very well in my constituency when they say, why are there delays in Chichester? And I say, oh, because of something that's happening in Croydon. It's disappointing that there hasn't been a commitment to the scheme despite widespread campaigning from members across the House. Reliable services are absolutely vital if passengers are to see value for money and the benefits of choosing rail, but that's not what is currently being offered by Southern Rail. So I do ask the government whether when it brings Southern Rail into public ownership, will they commit to reviewing a fast service for residents in Chichester and reconsider rail investment into the Croydon bottleneck? I hope the Minister has heard my plea today on behalf of my 120,000 constituents in the Chichester area and the South East region, because they don't ask for much. They are playing their part in the government's growth agenda and they're seeing large-scale development in their area. All they ask is that they can move around their community safely and easily, which is something that is becoming less of a reality every day. I don't expect a magic money pot to suddenly appear, or even in advance of the next funding round of the road investment scheme, but what I do expect is fairness. And when those decisions are being made, I hope the Minister will remember that the previous government promised something to my constituents and then they took it away, and that's simply not fair. Thank you.
I remind members, I should say, they need to bob. I can see they know that already. And the question is, this House has considered transport in the South East. I think we'll have Shulan Joseph.
Thank you, Sir John Hayes. I congratulate the Honourable Member of Chichester for securing this very important debate. It would not be a debate about transport in our region if I do not use it to briefly mention international rail service returning to Ashford International. Last month was the 30th anniversary of the first ever international service calling at the station. For nearly a quarter of a century, daily services operated between the station and continental Europe, making it a vital link for residents and businesses in Kent, Sussex and the wider South East to get to mainland Europe. Ashford was developed as an international hub, and its connectivity was a key factor in attracting businesses to my constituency and wider area. However, during the pandemic, the decision was taken to suspend services to and from Ashford, and they have not restarted, despite the fact they continue to pass through our station. To mark the anniversary of the first service calling at Ashford International, I was delighted to join other local MPs, council leaders, business people and other local residents at the station in the latest part of our campaign to restore international services. The return of international services is much more than a transport issue. It is central to maximising our region's economic potential and would be a major boost for jobs, businesses and economic growth. I know the government recognises this, and I am pleased that the Prime Minister, the Transport Secretary and the Rail Minister have all given their support to our campaign. The demand and support for international services is there. So I would therefore once again urge all operators who want to run services between UK and continental Europe to work with local MPs, councils, business representatives, the government and other stakeholders so that we can make Ashford International an international station again as soon as possible. The perception is that because of our region's close proximity to London, the South East is prosperous and uniformly well off. But there were large parts of our region that were forgotten about or ignored by the Conservatives when they were in power. The poor transport connectivity that exists in the rural parts of my constituency is a good example of this. Poor connectivity contributes to economic underperformance by restricting access to jobs and an increased reliance on private cars. This obviously has a disproportionate impact on those who do not have access to a car, such as young people, elderly residents, the disabled and lower-income households, especially those in rural areas, such as Hawkinge and the surrounding villages. Not only does poor transport connectivity limit their access to work opportunities, it also impacts their ability to attend healthcare appointments or being able to access local amenities. This is why I have been prioritising the need for improved bus service across Ashford, Hawkinge and the villages. I recently had a very good meeting with Stagecoach, who operates bus services locally, and I was delighted to see the government allocate £78.2 million in funding over the next 3 years. The short-term funding cycle that has been in place until now has made it difficult for local authorities to take medium to long-term decisions about local transport infrastructure. It is really good news that Kent County Council can make funding decisions to give all of my constituents an improved, more reliable bus service in both urban and rural areas. On another area of transport infrastructure that Kent County Council need to act on is to urgently do more to deliver road improvements for residents. Potholes have been a blight on the roads in my constituency far too long. It is another symbol of how the last government left things to decline. My constituents deserve to have road infrastructure that is fit for the 21st century, and I welcome that Kent County Council has been allocated more than £274 million over the next 3 years. This record investment from the Labour government gives KCC the long-term certainty they need to save drivers in my constituency money on repairs to their cars and make our roads safer. I was therefore concerned that in the recently published ratings on how local authorities are maintaining their local roads, Kent County Council only received an amber rating. My constituents know that our roads need improving, and this amber rating confirms that the reform administration at Kent County Council has not delivered on my constituents' needs.
My honourable friend give way.
I'm happy to give that back.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he also share concern about Hampshire's amber rating as well? Constituents in my constituency of Basingstoke are extremely concerned about the repairs, the accidents, the money that it's costing them, the traffic around this huge pothole problem. And like his own county council, Hampshire also has an amber rating. Isn't it time that they use the extra money provided by the Labour government to get on and fix potholes as a priority for our constituents?
Sergeant Joseph.
Thank you for that intervention. And I'm really pleased to see that our government has brought in this rating system so we can hold the local authorities accountable. So it was something I completely agree with my colleague there. Since being elected, I have written on multiple occasions to the reform administration at KCC, as well as to their conservative predecessors, that they would be taking the issue of our local roads seriously and doing the necessary work to fix them. It is clear from the road maintenance ratings that despite record funding from the Labour government, they have so far failed to do so. My constituents expect and deserve better, and I look forward to seeing tangible improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll have John Milne. How's that?
Thank you, Sir John. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. And I also thank the honourable member for Chichester for bringing this debate. And I can vouch for everything she says about the ring road around Chichester, which I have spent more hours in than I would rather. And I agree, it does have an impact on the commercial health of the city. It is off-putting to go anywhere in that direction. And I was formerly a county councillor serving in Chichester, so I had to go there many times. I would also echo what she says about the pressure of new house building. My area also, Horsham, we have many new estates. The funding, the Section 106 funding, goes towards roads within the estate or access roads, but does not remedy deficiencies in the network as a whole. That's not what it's designed to do, and it doesn't do it. So we basically have more and more housing going up the same roads. In Horsham, we just basically have one dual carriageway running down north to south, and that's pretty much it. The A29 single track and is severely overloaded already and will only get worse. So I very much empathise with all of those things. And Horsham was also impacted by the Croydon bottleneck, which you referred to, and we also suffer from delayed and cancelled trains. So I thank her for raising that issue. I want to concentrate mainly on public transport, particularly buses. Again, in my time on the council, I was on the Transport Committee, so it's an area I campaigned on in the past. And I know the pressures of budgets, and they are severe. So what I'm sort of suggesting to the Minister today is looking at a number of budgets to do with public transport and possibly combining them. So I'll go into detail. The home-to-school transport budget in West Sussex has grown by over 100% in recent years, and the government's decision to unring-fence funding and increase the distance cap from 20 to 50 miles is a welcome recognition that existing rules simply did not allow councils to meet their statutory duties, and that particularly applies to SEND pupils. So in West Sussex, around 33 million is now allocated to home-to-school transport, and the vast majority of that is on SEND provision, and it is ballooning upwards. At present, 63% of pupils are travelling via private taxi or minibus services rather than the West Sussex County Council internal fleet. That fleet currently includes over 500 vehicles and represents a long-term investment by the council, and it supports not just home-to-school transport but also adult social care and transport for older residents as well. Now, I fully recognise that many SEND pupils do require individualised transport to meet their needs, but we should look at, wherever possible, that this could be delivered through internal fleets rather than outsourced contracts. Reliance on private providers brings higher costs, hidden inefficiencies and less resilience, while direct investment allows councils to build capacity and plan for the long term. In the meantime, however, we cannot ignore the pressure facing those private providers who are currently keeping the SEND transport running. Providers in Horsham have raised serious concerns with me about the impact of national insurance contribution rises on their running costs. Some are questioning whether they can continue to offer these vital services at all. Andy Marnie, chair of the Licensed Private Hire Car Association, SEND Transport Operators Group, that's some acronym, has been clear about the risk. The increase in employer national insurance will substantially raise costs for SEND transport operators, pushing already tight contracts into loss. If providers are forced to walk away, local authorities will be left struggling to meet their statutory obligations. So the industry has calculated that a ring-fenced emergency SEND transport grant of around 40 million for 2025 to 6 would cover the shortfall across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. That is a modest sum when set against the disruption that would be caused if services collapse. The government's claim that the 515 million announced to offset NI rises for councils will address this issue simply does not hold, because it does nothing to cover indirect costs passed on by private suppliers. So this is why the government should look at exempting smaller vehicles, those with fewer than 10 seats, from VAT when they are used for transport provision. Removing VAT would lower costs for providers, reduce pressure on council budgets and support more flexible, community-based provision. Cost saving is absolutely vital in the context of stretched local government finances. The national government already recognises remoteness as a factor in adult social care funding, and it must do the same across other funding streams. Otherwise, county councils face an uphill battle, with county council network estimates suggesting that 98 pence of every pound will be funded by residents rather than central government, compared to just 58 pence in metropolitan areas. So rural bus services in Horsham have faced significant challenges in recent years. In particular, I have raised concerns both locally and in Westminster on behalf of residents in Slinfold and Partridge Green many times. The number 63 and number 17 bus services, which serve those villages, have both faced damaging cutbacks. In Slinfold, residents like Lynn relied on the 63 bus to access Horsham Town Centre and the rail network. Good public transport links were a key reason for moving to the village in the first place. That service has been rerouted and no longer serves the village at all. In Partridge Green, residents have raised concerns for years about declining services and their ability to reach essential destinations. The removal of direct services to Horsham has cut people off from health services to high street and basic utilities. Students no longer have a bus taking them to school or college, undermining access to education. Workers cannot commute between villages and Horsham, limiting employment opportunities. And as chair of the APPG for rural prosperity, this is one of the things we're looking at. This is a major reason why rural areas have lower productivity rates than urban areas. It's something that could be reversed. One gentleman told me that at the Horsham Older People's Forum last year, that the only way he could reach appointments in Horsham from Partridge Green was to walk over a mile to the neighbouring village on his crutches. What is most shocking in Horsham is that recent service cuts were made without consultation. Villagers were given little or no warning. Community campaigns were strong, passionate and well organised, but of course the decision had already been taken before anybody knew it was even being discussed. The bus operator, Stagecoach, told us that there is no formal requirement to consult residents, and that where changes are driven by commercial necessity, consultation will not normally take place. However, there's nothing to stop West Sussex County Council from consulting, particularly where amendments would result in the complete loss of a service for the community. Other county council authorities do this. So that is why I brought an amendment to the recent bus services bill to make consultation compulsory, and I regret that that was rejected by the government. It's not least because residents, given the opportunity, can potentially come up with alternative solutions that would work better for everyone. So this is part of a wider national picture. Back in 2012, only 59% of rural households had a bus stop within a 13-minute walk with an hourly service. Since then, councils have been forced to make deep cuts, in some cases losing up to 43% of funding. So nationally, bus service provision has fallen by 28%. With economic inactivity almost 2.5% higher in rural areas, ensuring access to education and employment through public transport must be a priority. The Liberal Democrats are clear about what needs to happen. We want simpler funding streams for councils, a return to the £2 bus fare cap, and the removal of VAT on smaller public transport vehicles. We need to look at coordinating all local transport needs and budgets, including schools, SEND, buses and community transport services. Yes, money is tight, but we can make the same money work harder. In conclusion, local councils face huge challenges. We must reduce reliance on private transport providers over time through sustained investment in internal fleets. But in the short term, we also need to work with private providers, offering tax relief where possible and supporting them so they can continue to operate. We have to reverse the slow death of rural transport services. Thank you.
Bennett next, just to say that if we work at about 6 minutes each, everyone will get in before the wind-ups. I'm going to start the wind-ups at 15:30, so work on that basis. Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Sir John. I think my speech is significantly less than 6 minutes, so we should be good. So it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Chichester, for bringing this really timely debate, particularly at this time of year, because I'm going to concentrate my remarks about potholes. Potholes in my constituency of Mid-Sussex are a daily hazard. They make journeys unpleasant and dangerous. They damage vehicles, and they are a symbol of a road network that has been allowed to crumble for far too long. One constituent wrote to me that after walking their dog in the pouring rain recently, a car hit a water-filled pothole at speed, and they were sprayed not just with filthy water, but with shards of broken road service. They told me that our roads are dangerous simply because they are not being looked after properly. Another resident described how a pothole had burst their stepson's tyre, leaving him more than £120 out of pocket through no fault of his own. The council, West Sussex County Council, acknowledged that they knew about the pothole. They even repaired it, but the claim was rejected because the inspection time limit had technically been reached. As that constituent put it, how can this be right that hard-working people suffer through no fault of their own? That question goes to the heart of this issue. Families in Mid-Sussex pay road tax, council tax and income tax. They should not be left footing the bill for damage caused by neglected infrastructure. Nor should pedestrians, cyclists or drivers feel unsafe on roads that are meant to connect our communities and support our local economy. This problem is only getting worse. Burgess Hill and the surrounding villages are seeing significant new housing, yet road maintenance has not kept pace. People are rightly asking, how will our failing roads cope with thousands more vehicles? We need more houses, but much like our water system, we need to know that we have the infrastructure to support them first. Under the former Conservative government, our transport system was neglected. Up and down the country, families and businesses are paying more for less, and semi-rural communities across mid-Sussex can see that the roads they rely on are neglected and left to crumble. The Liberal Democrats have been clear. Transport links are essential to our economy, for getting to work or school, for leisure and for exercise. That's why we campaigned in the general election for funding to fix the 1.2 million potholes every year and for long-term investment to stop this endless cycle of patch and repair. We do welcome the government's £7.3 billion commitment in November's budget, but funding must be based on need. As my Liberal Democrat colleague, the Honourable Member for Wimbledon, said last year, too many councils with the worst roads are receiving less funding than those whose roads are already in better condition. That simply makes no sense. In mid-Sussex, we want safe roads, fair compensation when things go wrong, and a transport system that works. I don't think that's unreasonable. Banging on about potholes is sometimes described as being peak Lib Dem, but it matters to folk every day, and it is absolutely critical to safety and to our economy. I know that I and my colleagues will keep being peak Lib Dem by fighting until our roads are brought back to a standard that the public deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have next James McCleary, please.
It's a pleasure to serve under you today. My thanks to my honourable friend, the member for Chichester, for bringing this important debate to us today. As a fellow A27 suffering MP, I can certainly attest to the constant traffic problems around Chichester, and I will touch on the impact on my own constituency in a few moments. Over in East Sussex, transport is not a peripheral concern. It is the backbone of how communities earn a living, how people get to work, and how rural and coastal towns stay connected to the rest of the country. Right now, in a number of places in my constituency, that backbone is cracking. The A259 is the principal coastal route through East Sussex. It links East Seaford to Eastbourne, serves Newhaven Port, home of the excellent and valued daily ferry service to Dieppe, and connects two of the country's key growth areas. It's an economic artery, and it is under serious pressure. The most obvious bottleneck is the Exeat Bridge. This is a single-lane bridge originally built in 1870, and it has been a known problem for years. I do welcome the fact that the Secretary of State confirmed the compulsory purchase order last October, and that construction of a new two-lane replacement is planned to begin in the spring of 2026. But I want to be frank. The disruption the works will cause will be very, very significant. The advisory diversion through the villages like Littlington and Alfriston, narrow lanes not designed for through traffic, will be enormous. The official diversion is via the A27, but that is not credible, particularly when traffic congestion reaches peak levels on the A27. Traffic will divert through our small country lanes. We need a credible mitigation plan alongside a credible timetable, not one or the other. Beyond the A259, the condition of East Sussex County Council's roads is a genuine concern. I don't want to get all peak Lib Dem here, but I hear constantly about potholes across my constituency, whether it's in some of our bigger roads or the C7, a small road that stretches between Lewes and Newhaven, which is in shocking condition right now, to the extent where some of it lost its road service during recent flooding. Potholes, poor surfaces, patches that wash out within weeks of being laid. It costs drivers money in vehicle damage, it slows journeys, and on narrower roads it creates real safety risks, particularly when verges start to collapse, narrowing an already narrow country lane. Between 2022 and 2024, East Sussex County Council paid out nearly £600,000 for vehicle damage caused by potholes. That cannot be a good use of taxpayers' money. I should also note that the county council elections in East Sussex, originally due in May 2025, have now been postponed for a second year. The effect is that voters have not had the chance to hold their county councillors to account at the ballot box for over 2 years. Councillors serving 7-year terms is not democratic. On road maintenance, squarely a county council responsibility on almost all our roads, that matters. And I turn now to the A27. And I want to be direct because lives are at stake. Just last week, on the 28th of January, a man was killed in a collision on the A27 near Falmouth. Last September, an 18-year-old man died in a fatal crash near Wilmington. These are not isolated incidents. The A27 through this corridor sees frequent serious accidents, and the pattern is well established. I've spoken to Sussex Police requesting a full breakdown of accident data on this stretch. I would ask the Minister whether National Highways has a current safety review underway here and what the timeline is. I would also ask the Minister if they can tell me whether they plan to review the current up to 2-year wait time for reports to be provided to National Highways following an incident by the police, which is causing a major lag in safety improvements, particularly where traffic conditions change, not least if they're affected by things like housing developments. This delay creates a significant gap in the crucial data needed for road user safety. Which brings me to the issue of rail services, or lack thereof. There is currently no direct train from Seaford in my constituency, the largest town in my constituency, to London. Every commuter, student or business traveller must change, typically at Lewes or Brighton. For a town of Seaford's size, that is a significant barrier. I heard from a woman recently who lives in Seaford and works in London, like many of my constituents. She used to be able to get a direct train to Victoria. However, this service was removed during COVID and has still not been reinstated 6 years on. It can easily take 3 hours to get to London due to delays and tight connections at Lewes. She told me that her colleagues from Manchester find it quicker and easier to get to their office than she does. This is unacceptable and lets my constituents down on a daily basis. The Seaford to Victoria direct service must be reinstated immediately. Over time, this kind of friction drives people and businesses elsewhere. I would ask the Minister to engage with Govia Thames Link and with Great British Railways as it develops on making the case for a direct service. And now to one of the most persistent issues in my time as an MP so far, which is parking in Polegate. The deeper problem is enforcement because Wealdon District Council has never decriminalised parking. Responsibility falls to Sussex Police, who understandably have other priorities. And the result is that pavement parking goes unchecked. That means wheelchair users and parents with pushchairs are forced into the road, pavements damaged, and a town centre that feels less accessible and less welcoming, impinging on business and other road users, in particular cyclists and pedestrians. Scotland and Northern Ireland have acted, and Wales is moving, yet England is stuck in limbo. I would welcome engagement from the Department for Transport on a deliverable plan for Polegate, clearer signage and ticketing, sensible resident permits and proper local enforcement powers, because pavements are for people, not vehicles. Key to reducing traffic and congestion is getting people out of their cars and onto public transport. However, so often, public transport is too expensive. Which brings me to buses.
On that point, my friend Gray,
Certainly.
I thank my friend for giving way, because constituents in my constituency have got in touch about the significant fare increase that they're experiencing at the moment with Southern Railway. So to give an example, the Leatherhead to London Victoria single fare at £8.51 is now increased 39.4% from £12.70 to £17.70, and this is because of the introduction of contactless by TfL, which determines differently the peak and off-peak trains. So does my honourable friend agree with me that such discrepancy over pricing really erodes public confidence in our railway and undermines Labour's plans to make railway more affordable?
Hannah Maguire, James McCleary.
Thank my honourable friend for her intervention. And yes, pricing is one of the biggest barriers for people using the railways. If we want people to move out of their vehicles and use the railways, we've got to make it affordable for them. Speaking specifically about buses, for many families in my constituency, they're not a lifestyle choice. They are the only way a child gets to school or college. Yet from Monday the 16th of February, East Sussex County Council will increase the under-19 Freedom Weekly ticket from £15 to £20, a one-third hike in one go. For parents already juggling the cost of living, that is not a marginal change. It is the difference between a young person getting a bus and being priced off it. And the affordability is only half the problem. Too often the network is unreliable and poorly designed. That is why I've been campaigning for a direct bus from Eastbourne to Lewes along the A27. Sir John, none of this is a luxury. Rural and coastal communities cannot be treated as an afterthought in transport planning. Too often the South East has been neglected and forgotten when planning or improving transport infrastructure. In the Chancellor's first budget, every single major transport project in Sussex was cancelled. After London, the South East is the most densely populated area of the country and its biggest economic driver. However, as we frequently get grouped together with London, who rightly are allotted a comparatively large amount of funding, our figure is augmented. And the South East rarely gets the funding we so desperately need. The A259 is unfortunately a perfect example for the South East as an overcrowded region with insufficient infrastructure. There is a clear plan to improve it, But the government has so far declined to release the funding, so it remains a disaster zone. And the Minister very kindly took the time to meet with me on the issue of the A259 after I met with the Prime Minister. Maybe she'll have some good news for me today, who knows. Poor roads isolate people, unreliable rail makes it harder to keep and get a job. Unsafe roads cost lives. These are matters of public safety and economic fairness. I want to finish up by just extending an invitation to the Minister and her colleagues to come and visit my constituency. Is a very typical example of the transport challenges facing the whole of South East, a primarily rural constituency with small and medium towns in it and a collection of villages. Lanes, railways, a ferry that goes to an international ferry service. We're within striking distance of Gatwick Airport, and yet we remain poorly connected and poorly served, and it is holding back growth in our area. If the Minister comes by train, she will experience firsthand the joys of a journey that is too often overcrowded and sets back Lewis commuters nearly £6,000 a year for a season ticket. And if she prefers to come in the ministerial car, she will meet the potholes soon enough.
Thank you, Sir John Hayes. And can I thank my honourable friend, the member for Chichester, not only for bringing this debate, for the way that she clearly articulated the case for transport improvements across different modes and across infrastructure improvements as well as operational improvements that we need. I'm going to focus on one particular infrastructure issue of cars, but not the type that the Roads Minister is used to. Cars as in the Croydon Area Remodelling Scheme, which is a train infrastructure project, as I'm sure the Minister will know. This will address one of the most important commuter corridor projects, not only in the South East, but across the whole country. It's a network rail back plan, and it's essentially designed to add capacity, modernise a couple of key stations, improve track and signalling, and, as was mentioned earlier, unclog the Croydon bottleneck. Well, what does that mean? Well, it all centres on the so-called Selhurst Triangle. In that area, so many of the trains that run through to the south of England get caught up. And because of that inefficient layout, it kind of bungs up the whole line, in particular those that rely on the Brighton main line, but also all other lines that have a knock-on effects because trains aren't able to get to station time, are not able to get their stock back, and so on. This one bottleneck in this small sort of couple of mile radius, it causes cancellations, reduced frequency, poor punctuality and slower journey times right across the southeast of England. And when you think about what the government is trying to do with its growth plan, in particular things like Gatwick Airport expansion, it makes no sense that they wouldn't put the investment into a project like this. And it needs to be put into context as well, because some of the infrastructure projects that have been committed to across the country cost tens of billions of pounds. This project, to get it off the ground, get through phase one, we're talking hundreds of millions of pounds, and total project cost over the lifetime in the low billions. And I know billions sounds like a lot to a lot of people, but in the realms of infrastructure money, this is really good value for money. It's been raised for years as a project that should be invested in. I think the last time the debate was had in this House was an adjournment debate by the Right Honourable Member for Croydon East, not to be confused with East Croydon, that's a station. And she made an extremely strong case just ahead of the spending review, but we saw nothing about it in that spending review. And when you think about the opportunities that this scheme unlocks, you wonder why it's not being chosen, because on its merits, it should be put forward. And I've got a reason why I think the government are not investing in this project. I think, like the last government, they've got a strange aversion to investment in London and the South East. Now, I understand why. There are deep regional inequalities in this country that need to be addressed. And there has been a severe underinvestment in other parts of the country, and we all recognise that. However, what's become the political consensus in recent years is to start pitting the regions against each other and to almost start neglecting investment in the South East and London at expense of projects elsewhere, not because of the basis of those projects, but because it's politically convenient to do so. And I think the government needs to look again about what projects can deliver maximum value and ensure that we're not putting this race against each other region by region, but we select each project on its merits. And the investment in this small area around Croydon, I've already explained how it provides benefits across the southeast of England, but we're naive if we don't think it also creates benefits right across the country, because where are the supplies coming from those projects? They're going to create jobs and business revenue for companies across the country. That's only through the direct effects, let alone the indirect effects when you're improving that commuter experience into London, into the capital city of this country, and the wider economic benefits that will be felt by all. The second second reason that's been given to me that might result in the delay in investment in this project is to do with COVID and about how commuter patterns have changed. I think we're already starting to see a snapback to previous behaviours. I think if you look at the passenger levels, they're almost back up to pre-COVID levels, but also the reduced frequency and reliability of services now, that's stopping people from going back into the workplace as often as they would like to. I hear this from my wife. She goes in once a week at the moment. She wants to go in more and see her colleagues, but she doesn't because she can't trust the train that she needs to get to go in. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg situation going on here. And if we really want to get people out of motor vehicles, using public transport more, we need to make sure that we build it so that people come and use those services. The benefits of addressing this Croydon area remodelling scheme are clear. We'll have faster, more reliable, high-capacity rail services across one of the most high-growth regions in the country. There will also be a particular benefit to my constituency. The London Borough of Sutton is one of the most poorly served by Transport for London. We don't have a single tube station. We don't have the London Overground service. We have a couple of tram stops, but they're so in the far corner of our borough that they don't really serve our residents. But if we was able to unlock this project, then it could unlock the potential for the London Overground service, the metro-like services, those ones that the rest of London are able to benefit from, to be able to be in our borough as well. And we're really excited by that prospect. So I'd like to urge the Minister today, just look again at the true merits of this project, how many people will benefit from it, the capacity for economic growth across the country, and I'd like to hear a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir John. It was a pleasure to serve on your chairmanship. And I want to begin by thanking my honourable friend, the member for Chichester, for securing this very important debate. And it was really interesting to hear the honourable member mention M25A3 Junction 10 in my constituency, which has taken many years and caused all sorts of challenges for my residents. But as it comes closer to completion, it is really good to hear from both colleagues. It's amazing how many MPs are interested in that project at the moment, and regular users of the difference the upgrades are making. And I really hope the project will show the potential for major long-term infrastructure improvements, but also the learning points. And these learning points must be taken because we need to recognise the disruption it has caused to residents, but also the significant financial problems it caused to local businesses and the national charity RHS. Now, there are many issues across my constituency that I could raise in a debate like this, but today I want to focus my comments on Guildford Town because it demonstrates both the enormous opportunity and the significant strain facing transport networks across the South East. Guildford is a thriving economic hub. It's home to a world-class university, a rapidly expanding research park, a major regional hospital, and a highly productive local economy that continues to attract talent and investment. But that very success has created real and growing pressure on our local infrastructure. Road usage is exceptionally high. Congestion continues to worsen, with some residents telling me it takes them an hour and a half to get the hundreds of metres between the research park and the hospital junction. And too many residents are feeling they, even with all the congestion, they have no real alternative to relying on their car. We have dual pressures. The strategic importance of the A3 and A31, and I imagine many in this room will have travelled down that particular major artery, but also the concentration of employment, education and housing growth that is not matched by the increasing public transport capacity that will support it. This isn't just local complaint or anecdote. This is a challenge recognised at a national level. The Wessex Corridor study commissioned by Network Rail explicitly identifies the corridor between Reading, Guildford and the wider South East as experiencing rising demand, constrained capacity and major unrealised potential. The study makes clear that without targeted intervention, housing growth, employment expansion and limited rail capacity will lead to worsening congestion, increased car dependency, which we absolutely do not want, and missed opportunities to shift journeys onto sustainable modes of transport. So that is going to bring me to the long-standing case for Guildford West Railway Station, serving the Research Park, Royal Surrey and the University of Surrey, plus the surrounding communities. This is an idea the community has been waiting for well over a decade and could demonstrably have an enormous impact on congestion, access to important services and our local economy. And of course, it would also make an environmental difference in helping everyday travel patterns shift away from car dependency and towards sustainable transport. And I'm personally very committed to getting an answer on this scheme for local people and businesses. And just last week, I was pleased to bring together key delivery partners, Guildford Borough Council, Network Rail and South Western Railway to discuss the viability and next steps. But despite the overwhelming case for Guildford West Station, delivery remains painfully difficult. Network Rail does not fund new stations. Department of Transport funding has become more restrictive, and at the same time as the government has set ambitious housing targets, there is no dedicated centralised funding pot to deliver transport infrastructure required to support the homes we are building. Local government finances are stretched to breaking point. Councils are being asked to plan for growth without the funding or the powers to deliver the infrastructure that the growth demands. So no matter how much local need or enthusiasm there is simply not enough money to deliver the projects that are needed. And of course, we must remember that sustainable transport is not just about rail. Too many residents are forced to drive simply to reach the station because bus services, ticketing systems, cycle routes and secure bike storage remain fragmented or inadequate. And we also need to remember that this disproportionately impacts disabled people, low-income residents, students and young people, anyone without access to a car. So I want to close by asking the Minister a couple of questions, if I may. What is the government going to do to support communities like Guildford that have been formally identified as critical growth corridors? Why is there no centralised funding mechanism to link mandated housing growth with the transport infrastructure needed to sustain it? And how can areas like Surrey realistically unlock growth without clarity on governance, funding or long-term support? My constituency of Guildford has great opportunity, but it needs government help to unlock transport projects to support economic growth and community growth. And I really hope the Minister will have heard my comments today and those of my colleagues and will respond positively to this request. Thank you.
Excellent. We now move to the front bench speeches, and I call the Liberal Democrat spokesman, Will Forster.
Thank you, Sir John, and I want to thank you for chairing this debate, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship this afternoon. I do want to thank my honourable friend for Chichester for securing this debate and leading it. It was 18 months ago that myself, her and my honourable friend for Guildford first got a train together to arrive in Parliament for the first time. And it was from that day on I knew my honourable friend would be a strong advocate for Chichester, but in particular she was going to tackle her constituency's transport problems, and she has certainly done that this afternoon. I chair the all-parliamentary group on South Western Railway, where I have spent a significant amount of time tackling the issues in the South Western Railway network that affects the South East so seriously. Particularly, I have been concerned about the deteriorating nature of that network since nationalisation. I would hope the Minister would comment on the fact that we want better transport connections as we nationalise our railway companies, not worse. And that is not what my constituents of Woking and the wider South East are receiving. I'm particularly pleased that South Western Railway's Managing Director and others have appeared before MPs to answer our questions and particularly listen to our constituents' concerns. Their engagement has been positive, and I hope we can move forward together. But it should not be the case that an APPG is one of the only meaningful routes for parliamentary scrutiny of a nationalised operator. And I hope the Minister would take that away and action to ensure that MPs can hold our new public sector railway companies to account. Moving to the wider railway network, on Friday, will be visiting Woking Signal Box to see the infrastructure there. And what I worry I will see is the poor quality infrastructure that my commuters face. And that is why our trains into London Waterloo are constantly cancelled and delayed. The infrastructure and the signalling equipment at Woking is from when I was born. It has not had any major updates since then. That is absolutely appalling. And if we are going to grow our economy, if we're going to decarbonise our transport network, we need to have reliable public transport. And I hope the Minister will agree investment in Woking Signal Box, but also the Woking Signal network. This is a regional hub for our railways. Woking was founded on the railways. It is a key commuter town into London. We are under 30 minutes from London Waterloo. Despite other Surrey towns having tap-in, tap-out contactless, Woking does not. We deserve to be in the 21st century, and I would urge the government to introduce tap-in, tap-out to Woking, to stop the over hundreds of people a year getting fined and caught out by tapping in at London Waterloo and being unable to tap out at Woking. That injustice is not acceptable any longer. Moving on to the other parts of our public transport network, I've heard from many colleagues about calls for reintroducing the £2 bus gap to get people back onto our buses that have struggled so much since COVID. And as the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, I fully endorse them. That £2 bus cap was vital and should never have been increased so significantly by this government. But several colleagues, colleagues from Horsham and Mid-Sussex, highlighted their areas have seen significant housing growth, yet bus routes have not kept up with demand. In my area, that is true as well. But I remember in Old Woking, we had a new development built, which was great, and the developer agreed following planning conditions to invest in bus stops and infrastructure to support that development's transport implications, and particular try to decarbonise that development. They built bus stops. Not a single bus has used those bus stops since. We need to have joined-up thinking if we're going to grow our economy, provide the housing we need, and improve our transport network. And I hope the Minister ensures that buses finally use those bus stops, but that never happens again in the South East. Moving on to our highway network. Unfortunately, my constituents have to cope with Surrey County Council's incompetence in managing our highway network. And we haven't had an election since 2021 because the government postponed their elections this year. But since that time, since 2021, the amount of complaints about potholes has gone up 106% under the Conservatives' watch. They now have to pay out almost £250,000 a year in compensation because they don't fix things, and it is endangering lives. Thankfully, we are moving to a new local authority that gives my constituents the chance to vote out the Conservatives that have mismanaged my local highway network so badly. And I would hope the Minister would meet with the new West Surrey Council to understand their concerns. I am really concerned that highway spending from central government doesn't take full into account how well used our roads are, whether it's on HUVs or others. Surrey in the South East has a significant footprint. Our roads are well used, yet that is not properly taken account of in the funding formula. Like colleagues behind me, I'm aware of the investment that has taken place in the M25 A3 junction, which is finally, eventually, coming to a conclusion. But I recently visited Birchmere Scout Camp, Woking Scout Camp, just on the edge of the M25 A3 junction. They have had to put up with disruption for years, and now their quiet, secluded scout camp is surrounded by unreasonable and potentially unsafe noise. I've urged National Highways colleagues to support them to recover from what they've had to go through and compensate for that. I hope the Minister agrees with me and agrees to look into that further.
Will you give way?
I will give way.
Thank you for giving way. Just on this point of national highways, I mean, the A21 runs through my constituency. It's the road between London and Hastings. It's single track. For most of the way from halfway constituency down. That is a problem about investment, and it's a well-trafficked road. But also, I wonder if this reflects his opinion or his view of national highways, that there's been a staggering degree of incompetence around simple things like cutting back the hedges so that the road remains safe on bends. And this is not done to the standard or the frequency required.
Right, Martin Wolf, sir.
Thank you, Sir John. I do agree with my honourable friend from Tunbridge Wells. National highways are far too slow at tackling issues. Only this morning did I have to report a chunk of debris fly tipping on National Highways land that has been there for ages. And they are far too slow to tackle simple things like that, to invest in our highway network. Which is so strategically important in the southeast above all other areas. The M25 runs through my constituency, and residents of Byfleet and West Byfleet have to cope with unbearable noise from the concrete surface that the M25 is built on in that area. I have pressed National Highways to take action to reduce that noise, and I hope the Minister will agree with me. This is about time they did so as well. Sir John, I think we've heard from a lot of Liberal Democrat colleagues this afternoon about their transport issues in the South East. It surprised, I didn't realise the Liberal Democrats dominated the South East as much as we did. We've had no Conservative speaker at all. They clearly do not care about tackling our potholes, trying to make our roads safer and make our trains more reliable. And I'm so pleased and proud of the team behind me and around me who have pressed their constituencies' issues this afternoon. The South East, so spending in the South East is roughly a third of what it is in the North West on public transport. That is not acceptable. That unfair funding formula is why we are raising these issues. And I hope the Minister will agree to tackle that in the future. We've particularly heard from my honourable friend from South Devon, whose A road fell into the sea this morning and announced that there is no national emergency funding. One road in Surrey has a sinkhole that is closed that road for over a year now and has cost the County Council over £2 million and it's still not reopened. We need emergency funding to step in these rare, exceptional situations. And I hope the Minister will take that away as well. Whether it's for my constituents of Woking that deserve safer roads, roads without potholes, whether it's my commuting constituents that deserve to have a bus service that's reliable and a train service that gets them there on time as well. I hope the Minister will listen to my and my colleagues' pleas for investment in the South East so that we can have fair share of transport spending and we can grow our economy together. Thank you, Sir John.
Conservative spokesman, Shadow Minister Joe Robertson.
Thank you, Sir John. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Chichester for bringing forward this important debate. And I have a direct solution for her traffic problems queuing up for access to the wonderful beaches at the Witterings. There is an alternative. Those road users could stay on the road to Southsea, jump on the hovercraft and visit wonderful beaches in Ryde, Isle of Wight, Bembridge, Isle of Wight and Sandown, Isle of Wight. And she's welcome to put my offer to her constituents in her next newsletter. The South East is a great economic engine of the UK. It's home to 7.6 million people, 368,000 businesses, and contributes £228 billion in gross added value to the UK economy. If the South East slows down, Britain slows down. Its connectivity, therefore, is essential to support the economic growth that the country needs and that has been so lacking in recent months. This region hosts some of the most strategically vital transport infrastructure in the country, as we have already heard. Heathrow, Gatwick, Southend, the M25, the M4, the Eurostar, the Channel Tunnel, and the ports of Dover and Southampton. The Dover Strait alone is the busiest shipping lane in the world, with over 500 vessels passing through every single day. With over 60% of the UK's trade with Europe, the South-East geography makes it fundamental to the success of British trade too. To ensure that we can maintain connectivity, the government must reverse its approach of imposing ever-increasing costs on our transport infrastructure, costs which are inevitably passed on to passengers, like national insurance increases and business rates. Earlier today, the Delegated Legislation Committee approved the emissions trading scheme for the maritime sector, which will add cost to domestic ferry services to the Isle of Wight. Scottish islands will be exempted, but not our own island in the southeast of England. Now, there is a long-standing assumption that has been around that because the southeast is perceived to be prosperous, it can somehow cope with less spending, again, as we have heard, or at least tolerate greater disruption. That approach is misguided, and as many members from the southeast would acknowledge, it's often London-focused, ignoring the areas around Greater London. We know that east-west connectivity across the southeast remains weak. Productivity suffers when journeys are slower, freight is delayed, and supply chains are less reliable. Spending decisions should not be judged on crude per capita formulas, but on whether they reduce congestion, cut journey times, increase productivity, support net zero, and strengthen economic resilience. Nowhere is that clearer than on our roads. Yet our road network is being allowed to deteriorate. The one-off cost to clear the national road maintenance backlog is estimated at £16.8 billion, taking 12 years to complete. In 2024, the Department of Transport reported that 4% of local A roads, 7% of B and C roads, and 17% of unclassified roads should have been maintained, but were not. A new road in Brading in my constituency on the Isle of Wight is closed for 1 month. Yet buses will not visit the town, notwithstanding there is a road and a viable route into it, which raises another issue for many of our constituents, the frustration that when roads do get upgraded, closures are often badly planned, and key transport that constituents rely on, like buses, particularly those who need to access healthcare or who have mobility issues, are not adequately catered for. Instead of fixing the roads we already have, the government's instinct does appear to be making driving more difficult. Only recently, plans emerged, quietly published on a government website, that encourage narrower roads under guidance from Active Travel England. Narrowing roads risk slowing traffic, increasing congestion, making overtaking more dangerous, delaying emergency services, and inflaming tensions between motorists and cyclists. That's not pragmatic transport policy, and it risks costing the economy billions. As Edmund King of the AA rightly said, UK roads have evolved since Roman times. They require give and take. This cannot simply be ironed out by regulation. And this comes on top of decisions such as the introduction of charges at the Blackwall Tunnel after nearly 130 years of free use. Yet another example of the Mayor of London making it more expensive and more difficult to drive, particularly for those with no realistic alternatives. Motorists already feel heavily taxed, heavily restricted, and increasingly ignored. Turning to rail, I want to address east-west rail connectivity. This is a project that both sides of the House have supported and funded in principle, but delivery has been painfully slow and deeply disappointing. Despite being completed in late 2024, services remain unused. East-West Rail has admitted to the most basic of design failures. The government has set out its support for East-West Rail, but prospective passengers understandably want service now. In October last year, a parliamentary question from my right honourable friend, the member for Basildon and Billericay, produced an answer from the department that offered no clear timetable. Passenger services to Bedford are now not expected until 2030, with Oxford to Cambridge delayed until the mid-2030s. This is not the progress that our constituents want and deserve. Finally, I want to touch again briefly on maritime transport. The government has proposed to support my constituents by accessing cheaper and more reliable ferry travel by setting up a local group chaired by an independent person appointed by the Department of Transport. It is progress, and I welcome it. Yet at the same time, it is putting cost on travel to the Isle of Wight through its emission trading scheme. It is not an example of mission-led government that it claims to be, and it's not an example of joined-up government. And by exempting Scottish ferries, it is an illustration of this pervasive view that somehow the South East will cope, where other parts of the United Kingdom should have special exemption. The South East ports and ferry routes are critical national assets, yet ferry services remain uniquely underregulated and expensive. Rail and bus operators face obligations on pricing, performance and transparency. Ferry operators do not. Cross-Solent ferry operators are unregulated and controlled by private equity interests, funding overseas pension funds. That would not be acceptable in any other form of public transport. It shouldn't be acceptable in ferry transport. That imbalance harms communities and undermines connectivity. Integration across road, rail and maritime transport is essential if we're serious about resilience and fairness, and I urge the Government to give maximum possible powers to new combined mayoral authorities to ensure joined-up integrated transport, whether it is transport that is currently regulated or not. The South East does not need grand gestures or experiments in public transport. It needs practical spending, proper maintenance directed towards how people actually travel. Fix the roads, stop penalising motorists, deliver infrastructure properly, effectively and efficiently. That's how we keep the South East and the UK moving.
Very good. Now we're going to have the Minister for Local Roads, Lillian Greenwood.
Well, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Sir John, and I congratulate and thank the Honourable Member for Chichester for bringing this debate to the House, and to indeed all honourable members for the tour of the region and the concerns of its residents. I really welcome this opportunity to highlight all the important work this government is doing and has already done to deliver transport improvements in the South East region. And of course we're aware of the importance of this region to the UK and how it helps to drive the country through adding £200 billion annually to the economy, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, being home to the nation's two largest airports, vital port links and more than 300,000 businesses. That's why we've taken important steps to support and enhance transport in this region, backing airport expansion at Gatwick and Heathrow and committing to deliver the vital Lower Thames Crossing, the most significant road building scheme in a generation. Now, I understand honourable members' disappointment that two major A27 schemes were cancelled in 2024, as both were rated poor value for money and unaffordable. As honourable members know, the status of pipeline schemes, including the Chichester bypass, will be confirmed when RIS3 is published next month. This government is investing in major road schemes in the South East over the coming years, which will bring real benefits to local people, including unlocking housing, supporting economic growth and tackling local congestion pinch points, as many honourable members have drawn attention to. We've approved funding for schemes subject to the necessary business case approvals in East Sussex, in Brighton, in North Thanet and Bognor Regis to Littlehampton. And in addition to these, we're also due to announce the outcome of our major road network programme review shortly, which will provide clarity over other major road schemes in the South East. And the new Structures Fund is precisely to deal with the sort of unforeseen problem such as that affecting the Honourable Member for South Devon's constituency. Now let me turn now to rail. The government is committed to ending years of poor service and fragmentation on the railways by creating a unified and simplified system that puts passengers first, rebuilding trust in the railways and in doing so, helping to build up local economies. The new passenger watchdog, it's probably being debated at this very moment in the Railways Bill Committee upstairs, will be a powerful champion for rail users and holding Great British Railways to account. Publicly owned South Eastern Rail is driving forward a £2 million station improvement programme, which benefits over 100 stations between March 2024 and March 2025, and they're investing a further £2 million to fleet improvements. And as the Honourable Member for Chichester confirmed, this government has frozen rail fares this year for the first time in 30 years. I'm sure the Rail Minister will be very familiar with the bottleneck in Croydon and will be happy to write to Honourable Members to respond to the points raised, including those raised by the Honourable Member for Carshalton and Wellington. And I'm sure the Noble Lord will also be happy to write to the Honourable Member for Guildford on her station proposals. This government has recognised the importance of listening to what local government needs. We're simplifying local transport funding to bring decision-making over local transport closer to the people who use it and empower local leaders to drive change in their communities. We're providing all local transport authorities with multi-year consolidated funding settlements, delivering our commitment in the English Devolution White Paper to simplify funding. These consolidated local transport settlements will give those authorities greater freedom and flexibility to make the strategic decisions that best impact their areas. And I welcome the Honourable Member for Mid Sussex's determination to bang on about potholes. Our roads matter to all of us, whether we're drivers, bikers, cyclists, pedestrians, and the previous government left our roads in a parlous state. That's precisely why the spending review settlement includes a record £7.3 billion investment in local highways maintenance funding over the next 4 years, including £1.5 billion in the South East region. Now, crucially, this 4-year funding certainty gives councils the confidence to plan ahead, to move away from costly short-term fixes and invest instead in proper preventative treatments that stop potholes from forming in the first place. This is a major step towards delivering smoother, safer roads for everyone who depends on them. And as my honourable friends for both Ashford and Basingstoke noted, the government's rating system is enabling local people to hold their council to account to ensure that they're using this additional funding effectively to make a visible difference to all road users. We also reaffirmed our commitment to invest in bus services for the long term, confirming over £3 billion from 2026-27 to 2028-29, £369 million in the South East to support local leaders and bus operators across the country to improve bus services for millions of passengers. We are giving local authorities the powers and the funding to address precisely those issues that honourable members have raised about lost services and the need for new routes to serve housing growth. This government is also providing funding to investigate the use of franchising in rural areas. I've lost my page. This will be combined with our recently announced active travel grant of £626 million across the UK, where over £133 million will go to the South East. Our record investment in local travel grant, which sees all South Eastern authorities funding increase year on year, and electric vehicle infrastructure funding to create a large local funding pot for all local transport authorities, for them to decide what to spend it on in line with their local priorities. And if I could just pick up the point about Active Travel England, which the Honourable Member raised, obviously it works to support local authorities to improve their capability and so be able to benefit from the additional funding that we are investing. And the Honourable Member for Lewis said that pavements are for people, and I couldn't agree more. That is precisely why this government has acted where the previous government failed to act. And we announced on the 8th of January that we will give local councils new powers to crack down on antisocial pavement parking. And I remember visiting alongside the former chair of the Select Committee to look at some of the problems in his area and on the South Coast where parking was not properly enforced. I also wanted to pick up the point from the Honourable Member for Horsham. He raised important concerns about SEND transport, and I'm sure he knows that the Department for Education, which leads on that point, they're currently carrying out a review of home-to-school transport, along with their wider review of SEND. But he's quite right that we need to work across government to ensure that we make the best use of funding available. In conclusion, Sir John, this has been a really wide-ranging debate. I've got so many notes, I'm trying to make sure I pick up as many as I can. But I am conscious that I won't have been able to address every point that's been raised by honourable members. But I do hope that I've been able to demonstrate that South East authorities have been given record amounts of funding to deal with their local transport issues and they have that flexibility to direct that funding towards the things that local people are most concerned about. But to help bring all this together in a coherent approach that sets out our ambitions for transport in the UK, we will shortly be publishing our integrated transport strategy. I'd also like to mention our recently published road safety strategy. In 2024, 192 people were killed and 4,754 people were seriously injured on roads in the South East. Our ambitious target to reduce the number of people killed or seriously injured on British roads by 65% by 2035 will aim to drive this number down, and we want to work in partnership with all those authorities and stakeholders in the region. And I'd like to take this opportunity to extend my thanks to Chief Constable for Sussex, Jo Shiner, who's also the National Police Chiefs Council Lead for Roads Policing, for her work in enhancing road safety to keep those in the South East and across Great Britain safe on our roads. I'd like to finish, Sir John, by thanking the Honourable Member for Chichester for giving me the opportunity to discuss transport in the South East region. I apologise that as the local transport minister, I'm no longer the Minister for Roads. That's my honourable friend for Wakefield and, can't remember, Wakefield and something, I can't remember what it is, the second name, Rothwell perhaps, and I'm sure that he will also be interested to read this afternoon's debate and respond to any points that I perhaps have missed. I know that he and I and my ministerial colleagues are always happy to receive invitations to visit honourable members' constituencies, and I look forward to future opportunities to see more of this vitally important and very beautiful region. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Brown-Fuller to briefly.
Thank you, Sir John. And I'd like to thank the Minister for her comprehensive comments at the end of that debate, and members from across the House for contributing to what was a wide-ranging debate on all topics that touch transport in the South East. And I'm especially glad that the Honourable Member for the Isle of Wight East was here to talk about ferries. If I'm ever in a room with him and he doesn't mention ferries, something doesn't feel quite right. So I'm very glad that he had the opportunity to raise his very specific concerns with the Isle of Wight. I think what I'd like to reflect on is that so often residents are told when they are talking about frustrations that this government is investing additional money, and they talk in big, large figures that sound incredibly impressive, but when they can't see that investment, when they are still sat in traffic day in, day out, when they're not seeing their local bus services improve, when they're not seeing their county council deliver the investment into active travel strategies, it leaves them with a bitter taste in their mouth, because all of those figures mean nothing when you still can't travel from A to B, when you can't go and see your mum who lives on the other side of the constituency, when you can't get to work, or when you can't drive your kids to school. So I would just reflect that when we talk about these transport issues, sometimes the figures can make us lose sight of what is actually the impact of people struggling on a day-to-day basis. And local authorities getting additional money is all well and good, but when you've got a county council such as West Sussex County Council who are deciding to cling on to power with their very fingertips by cancelling elections twice, 2 years in a row, meaning that their cabinet will hold on and end up serving a 7-year term, it is incredibly frustrating for people in my local area who don't get the opportunity to hold them to account when they've failed us in terms of addressing the potholes crisis and also active travel in our area. And finally, the Minister mentioned that she would happily visit an area, so I extend an invitation to her and to the new Roads Minister to come and sit in traffic with me around Chichester. She can come any day and can guarantee I can find us some congestion, and then she can see the impact that it has on my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is, this House has considered transport in the South East. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.